recording. So today we look at the concept of React hooks and we understand exactly what is a hook. So we're saying that hooks allow functions to have access to the state and other React features without using the classes. Initially, we had introduced the concept of components and we said we have two types of components, the class component and the function components. So when you're using the class components, it is very easy to manage the data within the class. But now when you're using the functional components, it becomes a bit challenging to manage the data within that component, and because of that, the React team had introduced something called hooks, and what these hooks allow you, it helps you to keep track and access the data which is within that component, and not just the data but any other React features, for example the life cycle of the application or the state of the application and all that. So they allow you to hook into the React state. And when we talk about a state, what is a state in this case? A state is nothing but the data that is entered or that is within the component. So hooks must be imported from the React. So when you set up a React project, it automatically comes with the library that contains the hooks, and all you have to do is when you want to use the hook, any one of the React hooks, you simply import it from React. And hooks can only be called inside the React functions. So to explain what we have said in theory, we have different types of hooks, and when you go to our website here, there is this one for W3 schools. You can see on this React tutorial we have React hooks, and there are different types of hooks. We have the useState hook, the useEffect, useContext, useRef, and these other ones, as you can see here. So what I want us to do is to look at useState, and then the remaining one we will look after them once we introduce the concept of backend, so that we are able to illustrate it together with how to call the APIs. So today we want to look at the useState hook, and this useState hook allows you to track the state in the functional component, and the state is nothing but it is the data and or the properties that need to be tracked within the application. For example, if you come in our project here, you can see in this file called post.js, postpage.js, inside this file we have created a simple function component. So we have a function component called new post form, and then within this form we have used this hook called the useState. And before we use it, we must import it. You can see above here we have this line, import useState from React. If I delete this line and then I try to run the application, you will see that it will give me a lot of errors. So let us see the errors it gives us. So you can see it gives you an error saying that useState is not defined. It means that the useState is not seen, and you can see where the error is happening. The error is happening in this file called postpage.js, so you can know where the error is. And in this line, the error is exactly on line 3. So on line 3 here, where we are trying to use the useState, but we have not imported it, so it complains of that error. So before you even use any of the hooks, they must be imported from React. So we are importing useState from React, and that way you can now be able to use it within that function components. And then we have said the hooks can only be called within the React functions, inside the React functions. So that's why we cannot be able to call the hook outside of this function, for example. So we are able to use it within this function here. And how do we use these hooks? We are using this useState hook so that we can be able to keep track of any data within this component here. So the data we are storing here is my text, and this text is what we are entering. The text is what we are entering here. So whatever data we enter in this field, this data is going to be stored. Is going to be stored in this variable called my text. All right. So this is a variable. It's just like any other variable. We said variables can be declared using let, using const, or using which other one, var. So you can see we have a variable called declared with const keyword, and the name of the variable is my text. You can give it any name if you want. Then after this variable, we have this function called set text or set my text. What is it used for? It is used to update this variable. So in case, for example, I enter, let me enter, I want to post something. This is what I have entered in the text field. Once I enter that value, it is taken the way it is and saved in that variable. And once I change any of these variable, maybe let me delete the first word. I have already made some change in my value. That change will also be updated inside this variable, and the only way we update it is using this method called set text. That's why you can see we are calling it here. In the next line, from line 6 to 8, we are declaring a function called handle change. So what does it mean? Handle changes means that any change, you need to keep an eye on this text field, and if there is any change in the input value, track that change and make sure that you update the variable with that change. And say therefore for any change, set my text to the new value which has been entered. Then below here we have a function called add new post. So this would be literally, it would be a function that will be triggered once we click on this post button. So when we click on this post button, we need to call this function called add post so that it can add this post to the database. Then now lastly we have the return statement, and we said this return is going to return an HTML, and the HTML we want to return here is a simple form with one text area field where we are able to enter the value, and then it has a button below here with the text post, and we are saying this button, when the button is clicked, so here we are handling an event on click. When on click is triggered by the user, then call this method called add new post. And when this method is called, what does this method do? When I go to this method, I can see that this method simply sends an alert message saying post added successfully. All right. So without the use of this useState, we will not be able to track. We will not be able to track whatever value which has been entered in this field. So if we use a normal variable instead of using the useState, let's say we use so before that, before I even use the normal variable, I want to modify this add new post so that we are able to see the difference. add new post. So I want to say post added successfully. Then after that, I give a space and also uh, display or display the message, which is any message that we have typed inside here. So let me display the message using the variable reference my text. All right, so let me save this, and once it is saved, you can see anytime you make changes in your files, make sure to save. And once it is saved, you will see that automatically your live server or your development server will automatically restart without you having to type again npm start. All right, so right now, for example, if I add a new line here, you can see that this button appears here showing that a new change has been added to this file. So when I click save, I want you to keep an eye on this console here, what happens. So when I control S, you will see that the project recompiles automatically to apply the new changes that you have added. So now let me post a new post here and maybe say new election results are out. All right, so when I click post, it does not come. I'm expecting it to come here, so let me see where the error is. Let me combine using plus sign. Yeah, so when whatever text I print here or I write here, I want to write my post and say the new election results are here. Then now I click post, I should be able to alert the message say post added successfully, the new election results are here. So whatever text I have entered is also being alerted in this alert box. All right, now let's try to use it without the constant, without the useState hook. So without the useState hook, if I have another variable, assuming I'm just using a normal variable declaration without a useState, I would have a variable called const post text. Let me call it post text, and then I say maybe for now it is equivalent to empty string. And then now I come here, in place of value, let me now use post text instead of my text. All right, then now in the place of alert, I want to replace my text with the post text, which is the new variable we have declared without using the hook, the useState. Then now, if we now save these changes and we enter the value here, new election, so you can see even when you start typing, it will not even type anything because this form is not aware about your data that you are entering. So it is not tracking any value that you are trying to enter, because you are using inside here, you are using a normal variable post text instead of using a variable declared using the useState hook. And therefore, that is why we are saying that the useState hook allows you to track dynamic data. An example of this dynamic data is the data that will be entered on the form, or any data that you think might change anytime and you need to keep an eye, or you need to keep track of it. So that is the difference between using a normal variable like this and using a variable declared with a useState hook. So from now onwards, when you are dealing with any data that is coming from the backend, or any data that is the user is going to enter from the front end, you need to make sure that this data has to be tracked using the React hooks. And an example of one of the hooks we have looked at is the useState hook. So that is all about the concept of hooks. Let me return it to the way it was. So here we are going to have my text, and here we are going to have my text. So that is all about the concept of the hooks. And unless you have a question to ask, you can ask before we proceed forward. Any query?